When I was 15 years old, I embarked on a journey on a rite of renewal, a journey that got me to a place where I wasn't thinking about a first kiss, I wasn't thinking about anything else but a car. And my dad took me to the car lot when I was 15 years old. Went to the car lot, and I had an idea of what I wanted. I wanted a red Mustang. We know the red Mustang. Everybody wants a red Mustang. And so as we were walking around lots on weekends, we checked out all different kinds of cars. And my dad brought me to a specific car lot at one time, and there it was, a red Mustang. And I'm standing there with the Mustang. And he says, "Jeremy, come over here and look at this car." And it was not a red Mustang. It was a beat-up, old truck. I wanted that Mustang. I told my dad, I said, "I can't drive this. I have a reputation to maintain. I have people I'm trying to impress." And I asked him, "Can you imagine what people are going to think of me?" But looking back, I'm glad my dad bought that truck, the 1991 Chevrolet Silverado, because my dad and my grandfather, and I didn't really know this at the time, but they restored cars when my dad was young, and this was their last project. My granddad actually passed away about 4 weeks ago. This was their last project when I was 15 years old. And it had new paint, had new rims, had everything that you could possibly want on a truck as a 15-year-old. It was loud. It was fun. You could hear me 2 streets away coming. But one thing that I didn't see, I missed. And I missed something big. I missed the potential that that truck had on that car lot when it wasn't like this, when it didn't look like that, when it didn't have everything. I was too focused on the what is, or the what was at the time, and I could not see what could be. That's what I missed. And so for a few moments today, that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about potential, and I want to talk about the often underrated aspect that is in our human existence, and that's potential. Potential will only remain potential unless we know what to do with it. So I want to share just a few things, a brief history, looking back into historical writings about potential, Aristotle, share 2 groups of actions that I believe we can take to cultivate the potential in both ourselves and the potential of other people around us. And then I'll finally share a few implications along the way. And I've always been intrigued with potential because I've found myself, I'm young in my career, but I've found myself in roles that I am working with students, people, trying to bring the best out of them, whether it be a professional situation, whether it be an instructional role, working with people to help them find their own success. Potential, really that concept has been studied over and over, but I found Aristotle. Of course, in graduate school, you read and you do different things, and I'm fascinated with Aristotle. And for example, in metaphysics, he comes up with 2 phrases, potentiality and actuality. And he's really focused on the relationship between the 2. But for me, I was stuck, when I was reading this, I was stuck on potentiality. And I was reading from Stanford University. They had an outstanding breakdown. And when Aristotle is talking about this, he breaks it down, and I mean he really breaks it down in his writings about potentiality, because he says potentiality is akin to the before, and then actuality is the result, the after. But I want to talk about how this works for us. How can we make metaphysics work for us? He was onto something. And we can apply this to our human existence because there is a direct link between potential and actuality and the fulfillment of that potential. So anytime we look into the future, we are referencing the potential of a situation, the potential of a person, an event, a life experience, and it's in identifying that potential. The first steps of potential that I propose that we should do in recognizing that in people is we recognize, we reach, and we connect. And it's almost like when you wake up in the morning, some of the first things you do, you put your glasses on, your contacts in. When you do that, you're taking care of yourself, right? And in my mind, we need to do that before we take care of other people. And what I mean by that is we have to look in ourselves and look at the potential that we have, that we ourselves possess. And I want to be the first to say, if you are watching this or in here today and you don't know that you have potential, may I be the first to say that you do have potential and you do have opportunities and you do have something special to bring to the table. And if you needed to hear that again, I'm glad to share that message with you, because I believe we all need to hear that every now and then. It's a nice neighborly reminder. But it's hard sometimes to explain something, right, if we're not really in tune to it, or we're not really fully understanding. So we have to kind of understand ourselves to help other people understand themselves and give them things to think about too. We can be a part of someone's whole story and help them make their story make sense too. And so this is where we begin making connections with people. So we recognize, we reach, we connect. All right, that's engaging with people in our sphere of influence. And I know that some of us are in education, some of us are in business, some of us are in other fields. And so that is something that we can do, is within our circle, we can recognize, we can reach, and then we can also connect. And again, this is playing a part of your role in your life, and you're playing a role in their life as well. With the foundation being laid through our recognition for potential in others and the connection that we build, we must be able to take those steps to be proactive. And so I have 3 more. So beyond reaching and connecting, this is the action. This is the actionality portion that Aristotle was talking about. Affirm, encourage, and motivate. The final step that we can take are these 3. This is kind of the actuality that he was talking about. I think we can only really do all of these if we've done the previous. And so we have to be able to put ourselves in a position to reach, to connect. And then once we do that, then we're able to affirm, we're able to encourage, and we're able to motivate. And I think there's a difference between these 3. I think it's a staircase level. When you affirm, you're praising, you're doing that kind of thing. Encouragement, to me, is a little bit passive than motivate. When you encourage someone, all right, you are helping them, you're cheering them on, but motivate, it's kind of like, all right, let's do this. You're with them in that moment. And that's what I see when it comes to motivation. I work with students. Most of my career has been in higher education. I've been in the classroom for the majority of that. In my current role, I work with students to equip them with resources and support. And so in my role, I have to do I have to reach them, I have to connect. But when it comes time to talk about their semester and talk about how their grades are going, all right, I have to find different ways to encourage, different ways to motivate those students. And so I have to speak to their potential, and I have to speak to, really what they are capable of doing. And unfortunately, we don't hear that message a lot of times in our world. People don't hear that. And so that's why it's incumbent on people, on us, to share that message, to talk about potential, talk about what people can do. And your potential is going to be different than someone else's potential, and that's okay. But we share our stories, and that's how we reach, and that's how we connect. That's how we make a difference. That's how we motivate. That's how we encourage as we go through. With the foundation being laid, through our recognition of, the foundational parts of motivation, I think, really meeting people where they are. And again, motivation is really a big one for me personally. Now that we kind of know these 2 sets of steps, what do you do with them? How do you do that? I've talked a little bit about how you encourage, how you motivate, but what can we do? Potential is very transformative, and it's very renewing, right? It's transformative. It's changing. And let me say this too, there's nothing wrong with people the way they are, right? But we're always working to grow. We want to look at people in the sense of potential, right? We want to work with them in that way. Instead of looking at imperfections and impossibilities, why can't we look to potential? Why can't we look to help them see their potential and help create new potential? And again, to be sure, I'm not saying that we shouldn't appreciate our current moment, right? Appreciate the Mustang at the moment. But why can't we look towards what could be? The challenge I pose to myself and to each of us here is to be people about what can be. Appreciate the present, remember the past, but believe in the what can be. As parents, you often seek to brighten futures for your kids. As teachers, it's the same thing for your students. For people that are in business and your jobs, it's the same thing. You want to work with your employees and those that your coworkers or anything like that. Sometimes we see potential only in what we want to see potential in. And so I challenge you to look around and see the potential in the mundane, in the everyday, and be people about what can be. What would happen if we looked and appreciated people for both who they were, but what we saw for their potential to be greater things, and how can we play that role in their story? Like my truck story, what kind of shift would our world have if we looked beyond what is, what can be, what could people do, what could we do, what could I do? Potential requires us to dig deep and to search ourselves and to help others search themselves. And sometimes that's renewal. Sometimes that's transformation. My grandfather, my other grandfather, he was a young boy. He wanted to be a police officer. And he wanted to do it for forever. When he got to the age that he could go be a police officer, they told him he was too short. And so he said, well, I guess I'll do something else. So he went into the military, went to Korea, fought in the Korean War, got out, went into the civil service, did surveillance and did other things for the military, finished with that, decided, you know what, I think I'm going to go and do counseling. So we got a counseling degree. And for the people that, sometimes you look and see people are short on potential, he worked with those people and he helped them find their potential. And then he retired because he just decided, I think I've done what I need to do. And then at the ripe age of 73, he joined what was called the Volunteer in Police Service. He got his badge. He got his uniform as an elderly volunteer police officer for the city of Montgomery. And he got to walk around with pride saying that he was a VIP police officer. So what I challenge you today is potential can be an agent of change. I've given you a few ideas that have worked for me through affirming, through encouraging, through motivating, through all of those things. But we have this opportunity to do this. This transformative power is in our hands. And if we recognize and cultivate it, other people can realize that too, if we start with ourselves to empower others. And I found that this potential in my truck found that potential twice. Because not only did it find new potential when my dad and my grandfather fixed it up, but when gas got a little bit too expensive, I had to sell it, and I sold it to a farmer. He took it on a farm, and it got a lot of work on the farm. And so my grandfather, I kind of alluded to it, but he got his badge, and he got his uniform, and he was able to serve in a way that wasn't exactly what he thought, but he still served, and he still had an outstanding life. Potential breeds potential if we let it. How are you going to recognize potential and put it into motion in both your life and in the lives of others? Thank you.